All right, good afternoon, everybody. I see that it is 1:30, and I will go ahead and call BCOW to order for today, Wednesday, August 11th. We've got our public participation slide up. Not seeing anyone in the public right now, so I'm going to save a little time. We have our standard ways to indicate that you'd like to raise your hand. Whether you're in the webinar or using *9 on a phone or using the council website, the council email address and the council voicemail address. Go ahead and put that down. Our next item is roll. Could we get roll called?
Certainly. Stacy Anderson. Looks like Stacy is out today.
I think she'll be joining late, probably.
All right, thank you. I'll watch for her. Mirta Becerra. Looks like Mirta's not here. John Contos. Not yet. Heather Harp.
Present.
Jordan Hess.
Jordan indicated he'd have to be out this afternoon.
All right, thank you. Gwen Jones.
Present.
Julie Barrett.
Present.
Jesse Ramos. I see Jesse there, so.
Yeah, Jesse's here.
Excellent. Amber Sherrill.
Present.
Sandra Visica. Doesn't look like Sandra is here. Brian Von Losberg.
I'm here.
Heidi West.
Here.
And it looks like John is here.
Yep, John just joined.
All right. So
And
let's
I'm
see.
present too. I had some audio issues. I apologize.
We got you covered, Jesse.
Thanks, Brian.
Looks like there are 8 members present currently.
And just as soon as you said that, I see that Stacy Anderson is joining as well.
Oh, excellent. Thank you very much.
We have minutes to approve from the 7:28 and 8:4 meeting. Any changes to those minutes? Seeing none, those will stand approved. Is there any public comment on items that are not on the agenda today? We're continuing with budget department presentations. Any public comment on items not on the agenda? Not seeing any, we'll move into budget items. And just by way of orienting people, as I mentioned, each time on the city's draft fiscal year 2022 preliminary budget page, we'll see a new item chronologically by date for August 11th today, with links included to the various items that we are considering. Those are added to the ones from prior review. And I see a question from Julie.
I just want to note and say thank you to Lee that the spreadsheet of new requests and tax scenarios is updated. So thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Yes, thank you. Lee, I think I saw your hands up.
I just wanted to point out what Julie pointed out is that we have updated both the calendar with just some minor modifications as well as the new requests and tax scenarios, which is an ongoing document that we will update each time there are changes. Thank you.
Great. And I believe we are kicking off today, correct me if I'm wrong, with Dale on property tax trends. Is that correct? Okay, Dale, the floor is yours.
Hi, good afternoon, council members. I am going to share my screen. Okay, so I'm going to present on 2 different topics on this particular slideshow. One, I'm going to talk about our taxable value numbers that we received from the Department of Revenue, try to put those in context of this budget and just talk about the general trends. While we don't have final decisions on the mayor's budget ready for today, but we'll make those final decisions and present the entire budget at the public hearing Monday. But now I'm going to talk about the trends related to that. And also at the end of this presentation, I'll talk about our peer city benchmarks that we do every year. So I am going to start. If I can figure this out. All right, so Mill value. So the Department of Revenue is responsible for establishing the market value of properties statewide, and they apply the tax rates that are set by statute to set our mill values. And you can see here we have our trend in mill value continues to climb, and in the percentage change in mill value. So we had, I'll call your attention to the percentage change, and we had this year we have a large increase in the change in the mill value based on the increases in market value we're seeing across Missoula, and that's happening across the state. This slide is showing tax base. This is another way to say this is the value of all of the mills. This is the taxable value that's applied to. This is net of our tax increment districts. This highlights a little bit better the jump in taxable values that we saw from 2021 to 2022. So what this means is with that growth, every mill that the city levies raises more dollars now than it did last year by that percentage amount. And this is the percentage change increase in tax base from the prior years. And this is interesting. You see the highlight there of the reappraisal years. Prior to 2018, the state was on a 7-year reappraisal cycle. 2018 was the first year of the 2-year reappraisals, and that coincided with rapid increases in real estate markets across the state. And so you can see the jagged lines there are showing the reappraisal years, and then there's a not a reappraisal year, so we don't have a big change in tax base. Again, in 2020, saw a large spike, and we saw it again here at in 22. One of the items that we track, the item we track the most closely and related to our property tax trends is the value of newly taxable property. This is the expansion of tax base. This is new, primarily due to new construction and annexations that would occur. Those are really the two primary contributors to new tax base. So this isn't value related to market value assessments. It's only related to newly taxable property, and newly taxable property is the legal nomenclature related to this. And you can see these trends have been interesting over time. I'm going to go right to this year. We had a really strong newly taxable property number. This has been new construction in last calendar year, and we had despite the pandemic, we had a very strong number. So I would add, this is returning to what I hope is numbers that we saw in the past. So you can see with the exception of the spike in FY20, which was really due to the large annexation out in the west portion of the city near the airport, our newly taxable property numbers have been pretty small compared to the average. So this dark bar at the bottom of the slide represents the most recent average, FY11 to FY22. And kind of, I think of post-Great Recession numbers. They've even though we were growing quite rapidly, I felt in that time, our newly taxable property numbers weren't that high. This is the average post that. So what we got today, while we had really great numbers related to new construction this year, this amount, we're back to the average of the previous before FY 1 through 10. But so while we've seen higher numbers, and you can see all these in prior years, this is hopefully it's a good trend, and with all the construction we're seeing, we expect that to continue.
Hey, Dale, I'm going to interrupt you for a moment. Two things. Could you go back to the mill value slide? That last, that one, the 145, 265 something's off with the numbers. That's not a 12% increase over the one before. It's like a 2% increase. The other ones make sense, but
Okay, I'll, yeah, we'll look at that to see what happened there. It might, not sure what, yeah, I see that as well.
Okay. All right. And then Jesse, question?
I was gonna actually ask your question, Brian, and then on another slide, it looked like it was better reflected. I think it was either the one before or the one after. Here, it represents the 12% increase on the tax base. I believe that is accurate, but Brian's right that on that second slide, it doesn't reflect or even match this one. So thank you for pointing that out, Brian. And then my second question, onto the current slide. I know that you mentioned something about the TIF districts, but what percentage of this do we know are we going to get to are in those TIF districts?
Yep, good, nice segue. If I can
Yep. Go ahead.
advance. We're going to start talking about urban renewal districts. So this is a pie chart showing the allocation of where the taxable value of our URDs is. And you can see the relative size of these. The 5,985,000 you see in URD 3 is a portion of that 159 number. So that piece of it, it's, that district itself would represent maybe 3% of the tax base. And you can see the relative size of all of the districts compared to the entire tax base on this particular slide in all of the city's urban renewal districts. This slide shows those trends in taxable values. And you can see we've had quite large increases when the real estate market really started taking off. And what this shows is that there's a lot of redevelopment and market value changes happening in the urban renewal districts, which is part of the plan on these after you have the finding of blight and looking for redevelopment in these districts. So it has big increases here and quite a large increase again in 2022. Now, to get to your question, Jesse, this is the changes as a percentage of taxable value. And so if we were to extended this graph prior to 2013, and typically, we were cruising along around 4%. It was a little higher, a little lower. And you can see we had this uptick. We created the new TIF districts, and it started growing. And also you can see it ties to the reappraisals. 2018, 5.9, 2020 reappraisal up to 8.1, dropped a little bit, up again to 8.7. But what I'm starting to see, I believe is the trend we'll see, is that this is going to start to flatten a certain extent. We're not going to see the big increases that we had. I think the tax base, the way we're seeing development occur in the city, that we're going to see both rapid growth in the general tax base as well as our tax base inside the increment districts. So I would expect this trend to kind of continue. I mean, it may go up some, but I expect this to be a little bit flatter based on the type of growth we're seeing in the future. And I believe that was the last slide related to taxable values. I'm happy to address any questions, and we'll tie this into the FY, how this works in the FY22 budget at the public hearing on Monday.
Yeah, let's go ahead and take one question. I see Heather's hand, and then we'll get through the peer cities and we can take some more.
Thanks, Brian. Dale, along those lines of that last comment, that you think that things will start to flatten as for TIF districts as a percentage of our total taxable value. Are you thinking that because if we have more development outside of TIF districts, so like our greenfield projects in particular, that's going to have a dampening effect on TIF? Whereas if we tend to, I guess, focus our development inward and infill, would that then cause the percentage to go up?
So we're always expecting and hoping that the tax base inside of increment districts is going to grow faster than the tax base outside of increment districts. That is kind of the point. We want to, they are created to incentivize development inside those TIF districts. However, we want to maintain a balance in that, and that's important to us because we need to do because it does help with our operational costs and maintaining our trends with inflation. But what we're seeing are these types of greenfield developments and the type of developments that are coming into CPDI, and we're starting to see subdivisions as the Suptepecane master plan is being implemented. We're going to see a bunch of tax-based growth in that area, and so that's going to flatten this curve. For sure, that's where we're setting, and we're seeing a lot of development west of town and a lot of development south of town. So on the south side of town.
So this is just like a point in time, knowing that it could, depending upon where we develop, will dictate how this percentage of TIF is of our total value.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thanks. Let's go ahead through the Peer Cities material, Dale.
Wrong keyboard. A few years ago, we started benchmarking us really related to taxable value and property tax type of benchmarks. And so this is a continuation of that. I'm going to start off with debt per capita. Debt is this debt here excludes revenue bonded indebtedness. So it doesn't include the utilities from any of these cities. These are all debt that is tax and tax increment supported debt that we are including here. What this shows is, Missoula related to our peers is, in the middle. I think I want to point out that Bozeman recently passed a large bond measure for a public safety facility. So that's, and the timing of that is always going to be different among cities. A city could have a big project that is going to skew a graph in particular, and that's why Bozeman is showing up higher, is that they had a recent big general obligation bond issue. And I think, this is a debt per capita. So we're trying to get a measurement. All these cities are, while there are peer cities, they're all different sizes and different ways of operate. But having that debt per capita seems like a reasonable measure to try to put us more on an apples to apples comparison. This is property taxes, and it's also property taxes and assessments. So what this attempts to do is look at our property tax rates, and this is simply mills, which is only part of the picture, and it also includes citywide assessments. So our road and park districts are included in this in the upper boxes in that tan color, and then traditional mill levies are the colored bars below that. And you can see that Missoula does indeed have the highest rate of mill levies, and this is the same trend we've had in the past. But but when you include citywide districts, where Missoula didn't really start using citywide special districts, until over the last not quite a decade, you can see that. This is we're kind of in the middle of that trend too, based on all of these things. So while we are high in relative to mills, we use special assessments less, and so this is how we compare to our peers there. Mill value per capita. So mill rate is a part of the picture on how cities generate revenue. The mill value per capita, or the mill value, is the other piece. Because if, in a higher value city, you need less mills to raise the same amount of money. And so that is always part of the picture as well. And for a long time, Missoula had been really near the bottom of this comparison, where we have a mill value per capita. We were down lower. We're starting to move up compared to our our peer cities here. So the market value adjustments are kind of catching up, and I feel are more accurately reflect that. So that means is we will have less mill pressure in the future because we will need less mills to raise the same amount of dollars. So we have moved up, but we're still in the middle based on where our peers are here. And then finally, I think this is, I think is probably the best comparison we can have is just how much revenue are we generating per capita. So all this is based on not the current census because city data isn't out yet, but updates from the previous census. And this shows all we did was take total assessment and property tax revenue divided by the population, and so you get how much is it per person in each of these cities is it our assessment, and again we're falling right in the middle of that on revenue per capita. So you'll see other that's the final slide, I believe, in these property tax benchmarks. Public Works, which is going to have their presentation on its budget next Wednesday, will show some of their benchmarking related to the utilities.
Thanks, Dale. Jesse, go ahead.
Thank you, Brian. And Dale, can you go back one slide, please? Yeah, so I like this slide, but mill value per capita, do you have a comparison slide that just shows the mill value in each of these jurisdictions and not the per capita, what that would look like?
Yeah, we can certainly, I don't have that readily available right now, but we can certainly add that to the slide.
Okay, yeah, and then can we go back one more slide, please? Let me see here. Oh yeah, so this brings me to a question and something that maybe you probably don't have prepared. So I know that the special assessments, they're kind of all very unique on each individual taxable property, how those are calculated. So how do you go about converting those? I'm sure it's complicated into a mill that's calculated based on whether commercial, residential, taxable value, thousands, the 1.39% set by the state legislature. How do you go about converting that? That's got to be a hell of a challenge because each one of them is calculated separately. Got to be
it is. Well, that's a great question. It is a not complicated calculation the way we've made this conversion for these purposes. So, but as a little bit of background, what I believe is that Missoula's road district and park district, the basis of assessment is based on taxable value. As far as I know, they're the only special districts in the state that use that methodology. Most special districts in other cities are based on other assessment methods, such as lot size, front footage facing a public street, improved square footage. There's all these types of different assessments. But in order to convert those to mills, what we did was simply, what we have is how much revenue each of those special districts is generating in these other cities. So we know what Bozeman's arterial and collector district is going to get. We can apply that to their taxable value and essentially convert that to mills. So the calculation is not isn't complicated, but that we felt that was the best way to try to get an apples to apples comparison. It's not perfect, certainly, but based on the dollar amount, this is the number of mills that they would have to levy in order to.
Okay, so you're just taking the total assessed amount divided by the value of the mill, and that's how many mills total are being assessed. Okay, that makes sense. And then I think I have one last question, Brian, if that's okay, on the previous slide.
On the what slide? I'm sorry.
The previous slide. Yeah, so this is something that I had asked last year, if all of the TIF bonds were included in this. And last year the answer was no, but then this year the answer was yes. But last year it was no because of they're considered a revenue bond.
They are considered revenue
included in this year.
Yeah. Yeah, good question. They are considered a revenue bond, but our approach was that all the ones that are, essentially, we wanted all the debt that is property tax supported. And while TIFs are revenue bonds, at the end of the day, is part of the taxable value and part of that. So we did include it for all of these cities.
So SIDs and stuff are included in this too?
Only to the extent they're citywide, I believe.
Okay. I thought so, but then you said that if they're property tax supported, so I was just curious on that. And then, so my last question on this is, what was the total debt of the city that you're using for this, and then the population that you used to divide this out, just out of curiosity?
It was, well, I can maybe, if Jessica, you're on, you could answer that question. Jessica, help put the data, the slides together.
Okay, so I believe, let's see, so I think Jesse Hogan Finance is the one who actually updated this data this year. And I believe that the numbers on the population are actually census data for these census data estimates for 2019, because that's the most current number that's available out there.
And do you have the debt number that, what's the number, do you have that at your fingertips, what the debt number that we use for this calculation?
Let's see here.
I'm gonna, let's not do this on the fly. I think that's interesting information to get. Could that get emailed out so that we have that?
Absolutely.
Yep, we can contribute that.
Yeah.
Perfect, thank you. It's my last year on council, I gotta be inquisitive.
Oh, that's great.
Good to be inquisitive. I was also going to request, Dale, the mill value of our peer cities. We've looked at that in the past and would be valuable. And if you could go to that slide that showed the combination of the mill levy, that's it. It's my last year in council, and I will do my screaming into the void, I feel like, and just point out what you said or emphasize what you said, that the real measure here is the combination of, it's the entire bar graph as you've displayed it here. And I appreciate you explaining that straightforward way about calculating that amount in the assessments. It's consistent when, I go look up property tax bill, for instance, on comparable homes in Kalispell, and you're just seeing the dollars there. So it's very easy to also do comparisons in that way. And the story that shows is a compelling one about Missoula not being an outlier. So thanks for the information. I'm not seeing anyone else queued up with questions. You said we're gonna go over this again on Monday evening, I believe.
We will show how this ties into the FY22 into the executive budget.
Okay. Thanks. One last one. Heather just raised her hand.
Yeah, thanks, Brian. Dale, would you be so kind, or Jessica, to forward this presentation to all of us on council, just so that we can sift through it a little bit, but prior to Monday night, please?
So I'll jump in, Heather. The presentation is on the website under the draft budget key. It's down toward the bottom, I think. I'm not positive, but the presentation is on the draft budget website.
And we'll also have that correction made on the mill value, the dollar amount versus the percent change. We will track that down and get that updated as well. And I can let you guys know when that when the revised presentation is up there.
That would be a great prompt. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. And I'm going to mention, I keep getting messages that my internet connection is unstable. So if I freeze, Gwen should step in and take over. With that, I believe next up is Central Services with Lee and Mike. Is that correct?
Yes. Thank you. I will launch this, and then Mike and Dale are going to jump in here as well. So Central Services is currently being overseen by Mike Brady. Our risk manager is acting as our interim Central Services director. And the departments that make up Central Services are our city clerk's office, IT, fleet, facilities, and finance. And the managers and directors of each of those departments are present today, but we're just going to kind of, in the interest of time, sort of run through this presentation. And then if council has follow-up questions, folks are available. So their next slide comes from that new request and tax scenarios document that was updated today. I want to reference that for folks because we don't have each of the detailed numbers in this presentation. Our city clerk's office, which provides records management and legislative services for the city, has 3 FTE, that's full-time equivalent staff, and an operating budget of $341,000. They have a few requests this year. The municipal elections, which are happening in September and November, and this is required. This is not something we can elect not to do. We have the citywide September primary and the citywide November general election. Those are run by the county elections and office, and they bill us back. Another request is public meeting live streaming on demand access. This is actually shown on the new requests and tax scenarios in our cable franchise fee fund, as that's where the revenue will be coming from. And this is to purchase an encoder, which will help with the technology for hosting and web streaming co-occurring public meetings. Our IT department has 15 FTE and an operating budget of 2.1 million. That doesn't include the large amount of capital equipment that they manage and oversee. Their requests include baseline increases to support these ongoing modernization efforts, including Office 365, which Mike will speak to a bit more, some increased IT staffing, the LIGO AVL maintenance, which I don't know what it is, so I'm not going to speak to it, and some on-call and standby funding. In their capital requests, they do have 2, but one is an ongoing request, and that is equipment replacements. So that's on the schedule. We fund it via capital lease financing, and it just gets, every item gets replaced on a regular schedule. They also want more technologies to help enable the remote and hybrid work and meetings in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. And Mike, if you're here, I will hand over the Office 365 piece to you. But I'll, once you unmute yourself, Mike, I'm happy to scroll through the slides.
I can see it. There we go, Mike.
I'm here now. So the IT crew has been extremely busy for the last year, as we all know, creating this hybrid or creating the virtual environment for all of us to continue working. And on top of the telework, the out of office work, the virtual meetings, we're adding the change over to Office 365. So it is a big lift. We're in phase 1, and the IT crew is working diligently to try and progress through this in the next couple of years. So you can go to the Office 365. It's a cloud-based platform, a software platform, and it's going to provide access to applications we know and use like Outlook, Excel, and it'll add new apps like OneDrive. It's going to allow us to have document collaboration and version control and access to our information. The next one, please. So what we expect to get out of this is it's a multi-year project, and it'll fundamentally alter how we work, where we work, and it will be completed in the course of a couple of years. It's all right.
Sorry about that.
It's a critical tool in how we're working to meet our strategic goal to foster our organizational excellence, and it'll be pivotal in operationalizing strategic goals at every level of our organization. We can go on there. Phase 1 deployment of the Office 365 suite and communication system is on target to be completed by December 2021 for all city offices, including City Council. This includes the new two-factor authentication called Duo. and upgraded phone system and access to new apps. Phase 2 planning is underway. We're preparing to do an RFP for consultant services and to initiate recruitment for a SharePoint Teams administrator, which has been recommended funded in the mayor's budget. The last slide here, slide 4. Phase 2 planning includes the development of governance and lifecycle management plan prior to the rollout of the Teams and SharePoint. With the help of the consultant, we will identify key business goals and develop our framework. The planning and research will also inform future budget needs for cloud storage, licenses, and staffing support for the growing project. There were 3 FTEs that were requested in the fiscal year 22 budget. The mayor's budget included support for the SharePoint Teams administrator and continuation of temporary position for help desk. The position of software systems manager was not funded in the mayor's budget, but this position will become increasingly important as Office 365 evolves with new tools like Power Automate and Power BI when they're integrated into the city. IT baseline adjustments are capturing the costs associated with the strategic support of communications, collaboration, and tools including increased bandwidth to deploy the 365 and transformative software. So with the help of Carl Horton and his crew and Alicia and Marty in the clerk's office, it's a work group dedicated to trying to bring this to fruition over the next couple of years.
I'm not sure if Brian's
I'm-
internet is working. Are you still there, Brian?
I am, sorry.
Okay.
I see that was your last slide, correct, Mike? It looks like a question from Stacy.
Thanks so much. I'm curious, in making the switch to Microsoft 365 and Microsoft Teams, does that affect how we will be having virtual meetings moving forward? Because I know, and the platform that we use for that.
It can in time. For the foreseeable future, we'll stay with our current arrangements.
Thank you.
Meaning Zoom?
Until we're functioning at a level that we can be successful with the Teams rollout.
Stacy, any follow-up?
Oh, sorry, I just hadn't lowered my hand. No, thanks so much. I'm assuming if that time comes, we will have more discussion.
Yeah. I
I'm
would
seeing nodding of heads of Dale and Mike. Okay, thanks so much.
I would highly suggest that. All right, not seeing additional questions on this. Mike, actually, I have one. Could you remind me, I'm not looking at the funded versus not funded. Could you remind me in that presentation at the end, you mentioned the items that were and were not in the administration's budget, the mayor's budget at this point? The one that says skilled staff.
Yes, the funding did not, the mayor's budget did not include the network administrator, I believe, or the full-time FTE for help desk.
Okay. All right. Thanks. We can move on to the next, I think it was finance.
I'm going to jump in real quick before Lee, she can throw the slides back up. I just want to highlight our change in technology platform a little bit. This is going to be the mechanism that we've been talking about for a number of years. So, and I'm just going to highlight the 4 buckets that I think about. We internally need a collaboration tool. You've heard us talk about in our reorganizations, we're breaking down the traditional organizational structures and really focusing on these functional work teams, these collaboration tools that that we're going to implement are critical to the success of those programs. Automation. So this platform is going to support automating our business processes, and so that'll be an absolute part of this. Records management. The SharePoint will end up being our records management system, and we will be able to access records much more easily than the system we have now. And then finally, I think a particular interest to council is Power BI, our ability to create dashboards and measure our outcomes and present them graphically. And all of those components are part of this whole implementation. And so we're really excited to really get this started and see it through to fruition. And it's just a lot more than the technology. All of really the hard part is developing the policies and training to support all of these things. So I just wanted to throw that in there.
Thanks, Dale.
Okay, thank you. I will jump into our next department, which just happens to be finance. We provide full service accounting and statutory reporting functions for the city, and financial information and advice to city council, city management, citizens, city creditors, banks, and other governmental agencies. We have 13 FTE and an operating budget of 1.3 million. We are currently working to understanding that we are at capacity, and technology isn't always the solution. We would like to be working with HR to determine an appropriate level additional FTE for the department. I just wanted to point out to City Council that in 2013, 10 years ago, we had 13 FTE and citywide budgeted expenditures were 91.9 million. This year for FY22, we have the same FTE and our budgeted expenditures have increased over 80% to just under 174 million. Now this is citywide, and this includes the component units of the Parking Commission, Redevelopment Agency, Business Improvement District, and Tourism Business Improvement District, all of which have their own specific reporting requirements from various different funders and funding agencies and so forth. So again, we're not entirely sure what that position should be, but we know that we are at capacity and needing some help. So we're throwing that out as a 1 FTE request. Anybody have any questions on finance before I move ahead?
Thanks, Lee. I see Jesse's hand up.
Thank you, Brian. And Lee, so I've been saying for a long time, I think you need some more help in there. So quick question for you. So you said those 13 FTEs are spread out between the MRA and the different parking commissions. Is that what you said, or did I mishear that? We do the reporting for those units, for those component units. And each of those do have folks who accomplish some financial tasks within the various reporting units, but the responsibility citywide for the audits and the reporting, the accounting, the payroll, and so forth fall within the city central services finance department. Okay, and that's the 13 FTEs that it all falls on? Yes. Is there any way, and maybe there's a question for, well, probably you as the head of finance, is there any way that we could maybe fund some of this by proceeds from those component units? Like, let's just say the MRA chips in, or the
they do.
Wastewater. Oh, they do already. So yeah. Sorry to talk over you. We actually charge an administrative fee to the utilities and the component units. Okay, so what percentage of I guess those 13 would you say is being supplemented right now with those other component units? And then also, would you suggest for potentially adding somebody else that maybe you raise those fees? I guess what percentage of the time do you think is what that breaks down to is taken up by taking care of those different component units? And do you think those component units are paying their fair share? I think it's the easiest way to ask. You know, that's a very difficult question to answer, because the last time we engaged in a thorough study was in 2008. So we will be issuing an RFP. Hopefully I'll be coming back to City Council to discuss an RFP, depending on what
what size dollar amount that contract might look like, but it's something we really do need to accomplish because we've just sort of been trending and making some assumptions so far. So actually answering that question about the specific share for each is a little more challenging than just thinking that these people have X budget and these other people have Y budget and splitting it out according to that.
I understand that. Thank you.
Thanks,
you.
Lee. I don't see any additional questions there. Are we on to HR?
Not quite. We're getting close. Fleet services. Folks have met Scott Caldwell before, and next week we will be discussing the equipment replacement and how that circles back to the CIP, the Community Improvement Plan, and the budget as a whole. So stay tuned next Wednesday for more of that. Scott and his team provide fleet management services to vehicles and equipment. They also provide welding and fabrication services. They have 10.75 FTE and an operating budget of 1.2 million. Their only budget requests this year are for baseline increases. And so these are required increases that are being funded in the mayor's budget to cover the cost of union negotiated increases in things like tool allowance, phones, clothing, and so forth.
Great, thank you.
Next, we have the facilities department. Matt Lawson manages and maintains all facilities owned by the city of Missoula. They have 2 FTE, technically 3. We'll be discussing that in a moment, an operating budget of 1.3 million. Their budget requests include air filtration to help reduce airborne virus spread in city council chambers during public meetings. And that would be funded through ARPA. They also have an ask in for a currently working 1 FTE custodial staff. This position was previously funded by the CARES Act, and we're looking to continue funding this through ARPA for FY22. And this person, not only in supporting Matt and Chris, provides for continued frequent cleaning and routine custodial duties and so forth to help with COVID. And if Matt is available, we don't have it in this slide, but there is a CIP request from facilities that relates to the municipal courtroom remodel and need for a 3rd courtroom. Matt, are you available?
I see him in the panelist.
You just need to unmute yourself.
How's that?
Yep, you're live.
All right, great. I got a couple different things going on here. Sorry, I hit the wrong buttons. The CIP is for the addition of a 3rd courtroom in the existing municipal court space. I don't know if do you have that CIP?
Give me just a moment. See if I can pull it up.
Thank you.
Too many tabs open.
I know the feeling.
Well, I can go ahead and tell you what the CIP does or does not cover at this point. As you know, we've had legislative changes that are going to require the addition of additional elected judges. This CIP will cover what our estimated cost is to add a 3rd courtroom to the existing municipal court space, update to the administrative staff areas, technology as far as video and audio in the new court space, and any security upgrades that may be needed. And we're hoping to have this done sometime around the 1st of the year. So.
Got it. And I see that item on the draft budget page with the hyperlink for the document we're seeing right now. Okay. Not seeing any questions.
Okay, then our next item is going to hit it back to Dale to discuss the requests for the mayor's office. And I'll pull that up for you, Dale.
Thank you. There's two executive requests that I want to talk about today, and they're it's mayor. I put mayor's office / central services. These are projects that are going to serve all departments throughout the city. First is communications and survey services. And this is a $100,000 ask of one-time dollars to look at three different things. One is, first and foremost, is to provide a citywide communication strategic plan. We need, take a look with in this modern era, and we need to be able to take a new approach to our communications, and we want to understand what that looks like. We will use some of these dollars in order to create that strategic plan. Using a lot of information that we're already gleaning, and we also have some support to help with us on this on research from the University of Montana. So that'll be a great partnership there. We also want to use some of the monies for communication specific projects. So if you recall, last year we did a request for qualifications and pre-approved certain communications firms to help us with projects, and they've helped us with projects such as emergency winter shelter in the past, and any of those type of projects in the future where we need to do specific outreach and communication. These firms can provide us that capacity to be able to do that. And then finally, we want to continue to build on our survey and constituent outreach by building on the recent phone survey we did the citizen survey. And while that answered a lot of questions and answered priorities, it created a lot of new questions for us as well. And we want to be able to have some services to do, use tools such as a survey or focus groups in order to dial in on what our constituents are feeling and needing related to the results of that original survey. We feel we can get a lot of this done with the $100,000 request, and we would use one-time money, so it wouldn't affect the taxes. And the other one is special projects manager. With our focus on strategic planning, and we are doing a lot of new things. We are ending up doing those on, in teams that are, multidisciplinary across the city, but everyone else has their day-to-day transaction, and we just do not have the capacity to do this. What we envision is creating in central services a projects manager to help us with this, and that would be funded by the projects that are being worked on. So the best example right now is the historic federal courthouse. That is a large task for us to take on in the acquisition, the design, managing through the design process and understanding that, and also the ability to look for and apply for grants related to that. The bridge apartments that came up recently, ability just to be able to switch gears and help us through due diligence on those type of things, and we can capitalize the cost of that. So it's just it's a project cost in these things. Any number of our projects can help pay for this, and that's how we envision creating funding a special projects manager to help us with a lot of these priorities that we're working on.
That concludes central services, unless folks have specific questions. We have two more items on our agenda today.
Great. Not seeing anyone queued up with questions. Why don't we go ahead? I think next is HR, right?
Yes.
I finally got that right.
Thank you. Give me a moment to get the screen here. I apologize, I cannot see what you're seeing, so I hope you're seeing the actual presentation.
We are. Thanks, Angela. Welcome.
Thank you so much. And I am Angela Simonson. I'm the new HR director with the city of Missoula, and it's a pleasure to finally introduce myself to all of you. I want to thank you for giving me the opportunity to present today. Today, I'm going to first introduce you to the HR staff and the role that we play within the city. I'll then share information about highlighted projects for the current year, and finally end with the 3 new budget requests that we've submitted and have received administrative approval for. I apologize, it is not functioning on my end. The HR department consists of 8 staff, including myself. We're a team of engaged employees committed to our profession and to serving the city of Missoula. When some individuals think of human resources, they may envision a higher functioning administrative office, and we are far more than the place that documents come to be processed. We're key strategic partners who assist departments in building and retaining a diverse and highly engaged staff. Our team is proactive and provides value-added services to managers, employees, and applicants. And finally, our department strives to provide and promote a learning culture that we cultivate, and we cultivate learning opportunities at all stages of employment. HR provides a host of services to all departments throughout the city, and listed before you are a few of those services, which range from recruiting and hiring support all the way to supporting the numerous labor contracts that we have with the city. Fiscal year 2021 proved to be a challenge for many due to the pandemic. This team served as change agents during the initial COVID response by quickly developing policy and practices that help to keep staff safe while they're at work, and then quickly developed policy, including learning about federal regulations, in some cases that were given to us 2 days in advance of being effective, that assisted staff when they were unable to be at work safely. We remained a steady force at City Hall, providing services to remote and in-person employees during the entire initial response to COVID-19. And then a final piece that we did in recent months was finalizing a telework policy for our staff. We also launched work for the new classification and compensation policy, which will help move the city towards ensuring that pay equity exists throughout all individuals across the city. We revised our hiring process and the related forms that are associated with that process. We finalized the procedure for digital personnel file management, and up to this date, we have completed around 90% of those files as far as scanning and indexing them. And then finally, we manage recruitments during a pandemic when hiring has been a challenge. We posted 112 positions and hired 349 employees in fiscal year 21. When looking at the city's strategic plan, the objective of organizational excellence stands out. HR can play a role in many of the objectives. However, this one is where we have the heaviest role, specifically in goals 1 through 3 that are before you. Many of the highlighted projects that you'll see in a moment are tied back to these 3 goals, as are all 3 of the new requests that I'll present later today. Listed here are large projects we are either currently working on or have plans to be working on in the current fiscal year. We'll be tracking key HR metrics that will give us the ability to produce useful reports for the entire management team in the city. We'll be implementing a new applicant tracking software system that will help us to improve communication, efficiency, and access across the city. We'll create a formal onboarding process for newly hired employees. We'll continue to promote safety and security for all staff in our facilities. We are in the midst of doing an audit of policies and procedures to ensure compliance with law and best practices. We'll be leading efforts on diversity, equity, and inclusion in the workplace, providing training and resources on hiring practices for all supervisors and hiring panel members. And we'll be developing modernized classification and compensation practices. And finally, working to deliver a citywide training that will allow employees growth and improvement. As I've shared, HR has a number of large projects that need to be completed in the current year, as well as years to come. In my few months with the city, it's become apparent that HR lacks, in some regard, in technology and resources necessary to provide modernized strategic services to departments. We cannot remedy this in only one fiscal year. And please know that the two of the three new requests that I'll present to you today are an attempt to begin to remedy this concern. I anticipate additional new requests next fiscal year to help us assist us in modernizing and becoming effective and efficient in delivering services to the city. It was difficult for our team to prioritize our new requests as all of them seem urgent. However, the following requests have been administratively approved and are considered HR's top priorities. And that brings us to the first new request, and that is a request for $10,000 to help us fund a new applicant tracking software system. Hiring needs continue to increase as we grow and as individuals retire or resign. In the past 10 years, the city has added 150.46 FTE. And while hiring needs are anticipated to grow, finding top talent is currently a challenge for some of our positions, and that's not unique for the city of Missoula. Many employers are struggling in our community. The new ATS system will help us in achieving many of our goals related to recruitment. We want to provide for a better applicant and recruiter experience. We want to allow HR to track common metrics that are used in recruiting across all industries. We want to allow HR to be more effective in recruiting, including being successful in our diversity recruitment efforts. And we want to this is required so that we can foster an organization that provides innovative services in an efficient and effective manner. We currently have what is referred to as an applicant tracking system. However, it provides for both a poor applicant and recruiter experience. Applicants cannot even apply using a mobile device, which many individuals in our community for them, that is their only access to the internet is through a tablet or a telephone. They have to create a new application each time they apply rather than having a master application saved for them. The application is not user-friendly for many, as it won't allow for us to collect key information that applicants sometimes want to share. On the recruiter side, the current system also provides for a poor experience. It does not allow us to easily screen applicants or communicate with managers. It does not provide for any type of onboarding system. It limits our ability for creativity in our postings, and it does not allow us to track key metrics. The metrics that you'll see in a moment were hand done through our payroll system in conjunction with collecting base information and counts by one of the HR staff. So I put together a few slides here to show you what hiring has looked like in recent years. From fiscal year 09 to 16, we averaged 152 new hires per year. And then you can see on the screen before you, we progressed into the 200s. And then last fiscal year, we hired 349 employees. That slide shows how many staff were hired. However, this slide before you speaks to the requisitions that we posted over the past 3 fiscal years, and it's broken down by quarter. And you will see here, well, first of all, so everyone understands, a requisition can often result in a number of employees being hired into that requisition. So there could be a requisition where we fill 10 individuals to, for example, start working at Splash for lifeguards. So that's why you see a difference between new hires and requisitions. And you'll see, we're looking at fiscal year 19 here, we moved to 2020, with the exception of this small dip in the fourth quarter of last fiscal year, fiscal year 20, we have been business as usual with our key peaks during seasonal hiring, but really hovering between 20 and 30 requisitions per year. This graph demonstrates that we have steady hiring and we have not experienced a significant or consistent drop due to the pandemic. This graph here, I think, is fun to look at, and I apologize, the color scheme made me do blues and greens. So I'll point out what you're looking at here. The bluish teal line that goes above the line are the number of total hires. And the green line that drops below are the exits, so employees leaving for various reasons. And the brighter blue line that flows through here are the number of requisitions. And so I just thought this was fun to see exits, enters, and then the requisitions as they flow through that.
Angela, can my apologies, I'm going to interrupt you there briefly. Would it be correct to interpret that slide, particularly the spiky on both sides, as the influx and outflux, as I make up a word, of seasonal employees primarily?
That's probably correct. And a lot of them we refer to as intermittent. So yes, the summer help. I believe that you're most likely correct, Brian. And we plan on, when we have a better system to help us track data, our hope is to be tracking exactly who is coming and who is leaving so that we can identify why we are losing people. My guess is all of these green spikes that drop very low are those individuals that are terminated at the end of the season, and some of them come back on.
Thanks.
Thank you for that question. So a new applicant tracking system will allow us to be more efficient and effective in the way that we handle all of those recruitments that we just spoke about. And getting a new system that is modern and is committed to continuing to develop and provide services to applicants and our staff is necessary for the city to meet the 2 strategic goals that are on the screen before you. New request number 2 is about safety and security upgrades. Most of you are likely familiar with the security desk at the entrance to City Hall. This need is, we are asking for $114,601 to allow for that service, as well as security that's provided for council meetings to continue, and that is an ongoing request. These are contracted services. I apologize for not calling that out. In addition to this ongoing expense, we're also asking for an additional $125,000 as a one-time funding for security equipment and resources needed to carry out the recommendations of the safety and security plan. And both of these new requests are necessary to meet the city's strategic goal of providing safety and wellness of employees, customers, and constituents. And if you have questions about this request, Mike Brady is available to assist.
Not seeing anyone queued up.
Thanks, Brian. That leads us to our final new request, and that is HR staff training and development. The HR training budget has historically been closer to $3,000 a year. Last year, Kathy Krigo, the prior HR director, requested to up that to around $5,000. However, that was when this team had fewer staff and had fewer strategic goals. As you saw from the earlier slide, HR provides essential services for all departments and has a heavy load of projects for the current year as we work to modernize our department and meet the goals set by the mayor's office and city council. Our team is a learning team that strives to provide top-notch services for managers and employees that we serve. Without adequate funding, our ability to stay current in our profession is limited. The HR profession is a profession that quickly changes, and any professional who wants to be of value to the organization that they serve needs to stay on top of that ever-changing best practices as well as laws. So it is essential for this team to stay current and feel supported by the city. Professional development is an investment that results in increased knowledge, productivity, performance, morale, and retention, and we need to keep the current staff that we have. And that is all I have for today, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have. And thanks again for the opportunity to present.
Thanks, Angela. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you.
Any questions from anyone? I'm not seeing any hands up. I guess I will just quickly mention that, and I think we kind of already covered it, Angela, but it would be really helpful on the that data. The more we can drill into that data, and I appreciate the limitations of the systems that you're dealing with to gather the data, but the difference in seasonal employees entering and exiting versus folks hired in a particular capacity where it's expected, that someone would stay are, at least from my viewpoint, not to speak for all of council, pretty significantly different investments of money. So the more we can, I think, somehow segregate that or not segregate, but distinguish between those pieces of info, I think would be helpful. Hopefully that made some sense.
It did, and thank you. And that is a huge goal of ours. One figure I forgot to share with you that I think we need to keep in mind, and I was actually surprised by this number. I thought it would be larger, but of our regular and seasonal staff. So seasonal actually are considered regular. They work seasonally, they're laid off, their job attached when they file unemployment, but they come back, they're just recalled. So they are not the summer help that we hire, for example, in Parks and Rec at the swimming pools and things like that. So of our regular and seasonal employees, 18% of them are age 55 and over. And so my hope is to start breaking that down even more, looking at how many are 60 and over, 65 and over, because that also helps us to predict our turnover rates for exiting retiree. Because I agree with you, Brian, that the reason why someone chooses to leave is very important. We need to understand, are we losing staff that we've heavily invested time and training and hoping that they would stick around? And if so, why are they leaving? Are they leaving because they're retiring, the pay, whatever their reasoning may be, versus those who are hired with the intent that they will be leaving in a short term? So.
Yep. Well said. Dale, go ahead.
Thank you. Thanks, Angela, for that great presentation. What I wanted to just highlight again is that as you see around town and as you travel around the state and country, you see all of the help wanted signs, and we have not been immune to that. We are competing more than ever, I think, to attract good employees. You're all aware of the recruitment difficulties we've had in a lot of departments. We are really now trying to, focus our organizational excellence strategic goals on HR because of that. And as Angela mentioned, it's going to continue. We have a lot of staff are anticipating more retirements in the coming years. And so we're really hoping to invest in this. And Angela, thanks so much for starting to take us to that next level already.
Good. Thanks. I think we're ready to move on. I believe it's health levy.
It is. And Angela is going to, I believe, kick us off with this one, but I will do a share screen and pull up the presentation that we have created.
Thanks, Lee. So we have a brief presentation on the health of our current plan, our health plan, the health of our health plan. So as many of you may be aware, we did make a change to our plan year. For many years, we have been in conjunction with the Employee Benefits Committee, having conversations about the desire to move our health plan year to a calendar year. And it finally was decided that there is no better time than any other time, and the decision just needed to be made. And so we, in order to move us to a calendar year, we had to first have a 6-month plan year and then start our new calendar plan year as of January 1st, 2022. So we are currently in our 6-month plan period. We did not make any plan changes other than proration to the deductible and the max out of pocket due to that 6-month plan. And next slide, please. Working closely with our actuary at Gallagher, they reviewed claims in the last year and have advised that we increase our contributions to ensure that our plan remains fiscally sound. They have that we do a 5.2% increase for the 6-month plan and an additional 7.4% increase for the calendar year plan. The plan will be that the city will increase contribution for these percentages and pass the same percentage increase on for spouse or domestic partners and dependent coverage, which will allow the employee only coverage to remain at $0 for out of pocket. Next slide, please. Those increases that you just saw on the prior slide were not due to the plan change. They were not due to the 6-month and 12-month plan change. They were attributed to high claims costs that we have seen. And I'm going to pass the fiscal piece of this conversation on to Lee and Dale.
Thank you, Angela. I'm going to pull up, this is summary and will not be finalized until we do our audit. This is our internal financial statement that we share with our employee benefit committee. As noted in the previous slide, our total claims to date, and we will still be receiving some of those invoices that apply back to FY21 for another couple of weeks, is $9.8 million. And we did have it budgeted for $7.7 million. This next line where it lowers down to 7.6 is due to a couple of adjustments and reimbursements that come in. But we're still seeing about $1.7 million over the prior year, which means our claims are just that much higher. And this Allegiance report, I want citizens watching and City Council to know that this is actually posted on the website under August 11th so that folks can drill into this and see it much easier than you can see right now. This is an executive summary report that Allegiance provides us, and it's got some interesting information in it. Their numbers are slightly different than ours because just of some timing differences and so forth. But you can see here percent change from the previous period, where we have a 31% increase in total claims paid, 25% increase in total claims costs. So that's including some of those reimbursements. And one of the big drivers that we've been contending with right now is large claims. And we have a handful of those that are ongoing. You can see that that's 103% higher than it was in previous years. And those are the types of claims that we just don't have a crystal ball for. And they pop up, and sometimes stop loss kicks in and helps, but sometimes we have more of those. And then, just the number of claims, and even when stop loss kicks in, it just means that there's greater claims expense happening to the entire plan. And so that's furthering Gallagher's recommendations for these premium increases. Thank you.
This might be a good point to jump in on that. Trying to think of how to ask the question. So I've been wondering about this in general with the pandemic and the period of time where, for instance, hospitals were not providing elective services during the pandemic, and then the return to that. And my sense of time, I think a lot of people talk about COVID brain, and I do not have a great recollection of sort of when in our plan year some of those dates sort of fell. And the basic question I'm trying to get at is, have you all determined, or do you think there's a likely impact that we would see then in claims, or maybe we are seeing it now with people that held off, for instance, on getting, I guess to put it most bluntly, people who held off on getting certain types of care, either because the hospitals weren't providing those services during a period of time, or because people were concerned, or some combination of those two things. Dale, please make sense of that question.
No, I know exactly what you're talking about. And so last year we had a good year in the plan, and I think a lot of it is attributable to that people did not have as much claims because of the pandemic. And stayed home, and we're seeing some of that in this year, that people are back going to their medical providers and doing that, and that is part of the increase. But Lee's right. The really driving force behind it is our large claims. Our plan isn't different than other health plans. 80% of our costs are driven by 20% of the population of the plan. And that's what's happening here. We're getting a lot of, we're hitting our, we have more large claim cases, more claims hitting our stop loss. So that's really that is more than anything, the driving force behind it.
Okay. Julie.
I seem to recall that we had a similar situation a few years ago where, with just a few large claims really made a big difference. I just wanted to say thank you guys for committing to changing the plan year to the calendar year. I think that makes a whole lot more sense when we were kind of in this realm of trying to set the costs for our upcoming plan year before we had gotten our taxable revenue figures. It was always seemed like a challenge to me that people would be faced with an increase in premiums before we really knew what the layout was going to be for the coming year. So I know that that's a difficult bullet to bite, but I'm glad to see it happening.
Yeah, agreed. And for what the commentary is worth, I think the recommendations are sound, and it's critically important to keep us in good territory, in a good place financially with the plan on a ever constant basis, and not get behind the 8 ball. Seems reasonable to me for what that's worth. Any other questions from folks? Not seeing any. And Lee, was that our last item for today? Great. We do have some time. And there's a couple folks in attendance. Is there any public comment that anyone in attendance would like to make? Not seeing any takers there. Lee, could you review, we've got, what do we have on taps for next week?
Certainly. So this coming Monday, our public hearing opens. And as Dale mentioned previously, we will have a presentation to open that public hearing and discuss mills and so forth in greater detail. And then the Wednesday following on the 18th, we'll be hearing from Public Works, Mobility and Infrastructure, the Parks and Rec Department. We will be discussing a few CIPs and that overview. Council has a new request. And we will also see short presentations from the TBID, Tourism Business Improvement District, and the BID, our Business Improvement District.
Thanks. And we will have some deliberation time in there as well. I expect we'll have a lot of time next week. So heads up to everyone. With that, not seeing any raised hands and concluding the material, we will go ahead and be adjourned. Thanks, everyone.